Hi and welcome to 3KQ tutorial on using Conceptboard as a facilitator. So this is the Conceptboard website. There's some good training, good blogs on there. What I'm doing in this tutorial is essentially lifting out the 8 tricks that we at 3KQ have found most helpful when running meetings on Conceptboard online. So I'm just going to jump onto an example board we've got here. These are things I'm going to go through, and I am going to start by saying that I am assuming you already know how to use Conceptboard. You've used it as a participant. You can zoom in and out, you can navigate around, you can do all the basic stuff. As a facilitator though, you need to be at a slightly different level, at a higher, better level than that to be able to run meetings well. And I'm going to start by number 1, showing you a couple of really helpful navigation tricks. So the space bar. At the moment, if you're editing things, okay, so you'd be using this arrow, the selector tool, so that you can click on things and edit them, move them around, all that kind of stuff. If you then try and move around the board, you'll know that if you try and drag, then this happens, okay? So to move around the board in basic navigation, you've got to click the hand, then you can drag the board, okay? But if you're editing as a facilitator and you want to be able to move really quickly, there's a neat trick. If you hover over there, you can see it says hand space, and that is a reminder that the space bar is pressable and it flips the tool. If you look at my cursor below our logo there, it goes from an arrow. I'll press the space bar now, it goes to the hand tool, which means I can move it. So basically you can flip between the select tool and the hand tool just by pressing the space bar, and it just makes navigating around so much quicker and easier, okay? I don't normally tell participants about that because it just confuses them until they become more familiar with Conceptboard. So that's the first thing. The second thing under navigation tricks is zooming to move, okay? If you know as a facilitator you have to move right across to the other side of the board to another item or another workspace or a diagram or something, of course, you can press the space bar and you can move all the way over like this, and it's a little bit noisy and a bit jerky and takes a long time. So not very smooth. A much better way of doing it is zoom out, okay? Zoom right out, choose the next thing you're going to zoom into that you want to navigate to, and simply zoom in, okay? I was a bit jerky there, but basically zoom out, zoom in, much quicker. And you'll see when you zoom in and out, what Conceptboard helpfully does is it zooms in and out, focusing on your cursor. So if I zoom in on the logo, it's because I've hovered over it, then zoomed in. So you can zoom out, hover over the next thing, and zoom in. It makes it silent and really smooth. And that's particularly helpful when we come on to moderating at number 6 here. So that's number 1. Practice these things. You will get really slick at them very quickly, okay, once you know them. Number 2 then, set a landing page. Okay, so if I just refresh this page for a second, pretending I was a participant, when they arrive, a participant arrives on a board to begin with, okay, you do not want them to be really confused. So what I've done here is I've set this instruction page as a landing page, and let me just show you how I did that, okay? So if you select the area, the item, the instructions that you want to add, you click these 3 dots in the menu that comes up, and then here this is the sections button. So this says remove from sections because I've already added it. In fact, let's just remove it there. So click on the item, click on the more button, click on add to sections. Okay, it's popped up here now, the welcome, because it's called welcome here. It's Conceptboard's read it. It's programmed in as a section, but it's not yet set as the arrival page. So find it in the sections list here, right click, set as initial start section. Okay, and there's all, you can rename it, you can move them up and down, you can remove it from the sections and so on, but let's set it as the initial start section. In my language that means the participant arrival page. Get rid of this list by clicking the sections button, and it's a good idea to just zoom right out, move elsewhere on the board, and then just refresh the page. Give it a few seconds, because when you refresh it, essentially what you're doing is you're re-accessing the board in exactly the same way that the participants will. And you'll see there's just a few seconds where Conceptboard initiates the board right in the center of the board, so you see some other random content, but then as it downloads 2 or 3 seconds later, it flicks you immediately to the arrival section. Okay, very, very helpful. Feel free to copy and adapt these instructions, by the way. We use these in all of our meetings, very similar. So zooming back to here, set a landing page sections. Number 3, setting permissions. So just like in a good facilitated meeting in the room, you would set ground rules and have real clarity about who's allowed to do what. Exactly the same on Conceptboard, except fortunately, in a way, you can just use the software to do it for you. So do not run a meeting without being really clear what permissions you're using. Okay, you will end up in really hot water with participants deleting things that you don't want deleted, editing each other's materials, adding stuff up in the wrong place, all that kind of thing. So it's this blue share button in the top right hand corner. Give that a click. So this is the important bit here. Anyone with the link can access as, at the moment it says reviewer, but you can change that by this button here and then the little drop down menu. So anyone with a link can access as an editor, reviewer or reader. I'll go through what they mean in a second. I'm just going to change it to reader to show you how you can change it, and then done. So that's done. So the 3 permissions, there are 3, a little bit like gold, silver, bronze here. Editor, that means people can edit, anyone can edit anything, and they can also make other people editors and change their permissions. So obviously be really careful about that. You only want a couple of really trusted, competent colleagues to be editors. Otherwise, people will move your stuff and they will delete your stuff and they will have no idea what they've done or how to put it back. It's the equivalent of somebody vanishing your flip charts or your PowerPoint slides halfway through a meeting. So be careful with that. Reviewer is a really helpful function, a really helpful level of permissions. Conceptboard have really got this right in that people can add and edit their own material, but they cannot edit, or change or move anybody else's material. So it's just really helpful. It really mimics basically what people do in the room with flip charts and sticky notes and so on. Lastly, reader is just a read-only function, basically. Very helpful at the end of a workshop. What you can do is so when there's no more input to give, you can go to that, to the share button, you can click the change button, and if it's not already there, make it basically a read-only board, so everybody can still access it. You as the owner, you're still an editor, and some of your colleagues might be an editor, but nobody else can change it. It just gives you confidence that nobody is either mistakenly tampering with something, deleting something, or actually maliciously doing so. Now, I mentioned that you can invite individual people, so your team members and trusted colleagues, to be editors or have different permissions. And basically, you just add in their email address there, set this to whatever permission you want, and then click done. And it changes their permission specifically. They do have to have at least a free Conceptboard account to do that, otherwise they're logging in as a random guest. So Conceptboard can't recognize them. Your colleagues do have to be logged in with an account. Okay, to do that, have a practice with it, because what's great about these is that you can change them halfway through a workshop. So you might, for example, set people as reviewers to begin with. That's our standard default. But then you might want to, for example, give people the option of moving a bunch of sticky notes around to cluster things. And because they didn't generate all of that material individually themselves, they have to be editors to be able to move it. So you can make them editors for 5 minutes. Then when that task is done, without even telling anyone, you can just flick it back and say, right, I've just changed your permissions. You're now reviewers. You won't be able to move anyone else's stuff. Really, really flexible. Okay, so that is permissions. Don't go into a meeting without knowing exactly how your permissions are set. If you have made people editors and are doing so for quite a long time, you will want to get your head around how to pin your own material, okay? And I'll just show you here how to do that. So if you just highlight something that you want to be locked or pinned to the board, just zoom out a little bit more there, locking and pinning to the board, you just use this pin button, okay? So as soon as you highlight an item, the pin button appears, you just click it, okay? So now when someone comes along, clicks once, and accidentally clicks on it, they actually can't click on it, okay? If they, as an editor, really want to move that thing, they still can, but they have to double click. So you double click, then you can unpin it, all right? So it doesn't pin it permanently, it just pins it and eliminates all the accidental moving, but it doesn't prevent it, okay? That's really, really helpful thing to get your head around, but of course only necessary if your participants are ever editors, because if they're reviewers, they won't be able to click on any of your materials anyway. Number 5 then, screening material. So if you look at this board, obviously we've been working for a few days with a group on this board, there's loads of stuff there, but if you are constructing quite a complicated set of material on a board to head into a meeting, like you might with flip charts or whatever, you'll want to screen some of that material so that people don't get distracted, start mentally wandering off, looking ahead in the meeting. And the best way of doing that is just to create a shape, okay? Just create a shape over here. Ignore the color for a second. Let's change that because, in fact, let me just show you. If you put this over here, you see it doesn't actually cover the text up. One slight niggle I have with Conceptboard is that the text always trumps anything else that you put over the top. A picture, a map, a PowerPoint slide, a block of color like this. So the only way that you can get around that is basically just to make the screening panel the same color as the text, and then it disappears, okay? If the participants are reviewers, they can't move this. If they're editors, you can pin it down, and then when you come to it, you just move it aside, delete it, and you're back in action with fresh content in front of people. Screening is really helpful, okay? Moderation, number 6. This is just such a useful tool as facilitators. So in the room, you can use your fingers to point at things. You can point at a PowerPoint slide. You can point and walk over to a flip chart, tap the wall with your pen, all these little kind of visual cues. And by looking around, you can see whether people are following you or whether they're bored and they're staring out the window, or they're just a bit lost and they're not quite sure what you're talking about. Online, virtually impossible. So what's great about Conceptboard is you can force people to look at what you want them to look at, and it's this slideshow looking like button down here called moderation, and basically when you click that, it reveals the start moderating blue button. And when I, as an editor, because it's only editors that have this, as an editor, if I start moderating, now when I zoom out and zoom in over here, everybody's board moves. I now have control of every single person's board who is logged into the board at this moment. And then as soon as I click the red button, I stop moderating and they have control back. So if you're navigating people to a new workspace or a key question or back to the agenda to signpost things, very, very helpful. What I would say though is tell people you're doing it, and don't do it for very long. So I'll just kind of rehearse my habit. I say, I'm just going to take control of the board just for 5 seconds to get you back to the agenda here. There we go. And now I'm going to give you control back. 5 seconds, that's all it takes. If you're slick with your navigation, moderating, it brings everyone to the right page, but don't hold on to that control, give it straight back to people. Otherwise, it's like kind of holding somebody's ear and making them look somewhere for a long time, okay? People don't welcome that. So voting function, number 7, a couple more things I wanted to show you here. So we don't use this an awful lot, but some of you might really like this. I thought it was quite neat when I found it. So if you imagine you have generated 5 ideas. Okay, here's 5 random ideas stuck on sticky notes. Participants have generated all this. Everyone understands them. But now you've got 45 people on the call or 90 people on the call, and you want to get a sense of how many people like all these things. So in the room, you'd be talking about sticky dots or hands in the air and that kind of thing. It's a bit tricky online unless you're going to use another platform like Slido or Menti. Or, polling and that kind of thing, but you can do it graphically with this. And basically all you do, I'll just illustrate it now, just highlight all of the votable items. That's what Conceptboard calls them. You'll see all 5 of them are highlighted. Then in that area, you right click, voting, and then create voting widget. Okay, and that's basically what it's done. So it then it shows you the voting setup here. At the moment there's 5 votes per person, but maybe you want to cut that down to 3. You might want to ask people, which of these 3 ideas do you like which ideas do you like the most? Give us your favorite 3, or something like that. Obviously you've got to think really carefully about your key question. So you as an editor will have this box up here, no one else will. Then hit start at the relevant time, and then you see each one of these. So this is the screen everyone else sees. There's a number there with a plus. If people want to vote, they just click on the plus. You see my 3 votes is down to 2 now. If I want to do this one, it goes down to 1. Okay, and then if I change my mind, it's great. You can go, actually, I don't like idea 2. I prefer idea 4. Still got 1 vote. Let's give another one to that. Then my votes are now over. Okay. As the editor, I have these 2 buttons, which nobody else will have. Sorry, other editors will have them, but not if you're a reader or a reviewer. So basically, end voting for all. Yes, I do want to end voting for everybody. This is the screen it gives you, and everyone else will see this as well. The bigger the number, the bigger the summary blob on the right-hand side. And if you want to, then you can reset it, you can export it, and so on, get more information about it and so on. So voting, obviously, a bit of a shame that it's called voting. It's not very helpful. Voting leaves winners as well as losers, and as facilitator, you've got to deal with that. So what we always do at 3KQ is really tone down the voting word. We just say, let's take a straw poll. Just show us where your interest and where your support lies around these. Try not to use the voting word too much, but be cool about it. So that is the voting function, and if you want to get rid of it, by the way, you just click on it once and click delete. It doesn't get rid of the ideas, the content, just gets rid of the voting function. Right, last thing to show you is the timer button. Down at the bottom right hand corner, get rid of the moderation button. Really neat little thing we sometimes use is the timer button. You just click it, just creates here, gives you a timer. I think default it comes up as 15 minutes, but obviously if you want to give people 4 minutes here, just type that in, just click start. This timer appears on everybody's screen, okay? And when it times out, it gives you a nice little ting sound. It gives you and everybody, so you can use that. Okay, so 8 things there for you as a facilitator to master to get the most out of Conceptboard. What I would say is test it, trial it, and good luck with it.